Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. Wait. Happy birthday, if it's your birthday. Happy anniversary. Well, if it's your anniversary, don't worry, guys. It's not mine.
I'm just okay. I didn't see that coming. But it's good. Absolutely.
I don't know why it happened.
So it's going to be a beautiful day, apparently.
Oh, clearly it's going to be an exceptionally beautiful day for those whose birthday it is and whose wedding anniversaries. And in case you forgot it's your wedding anniversary, it is.
Wow, you've been in those shoes, right?
You know what it is. If you forgot, make the call now. Just send a text or something, for God's sake. Do yourself a favor.
You wonder sometimes if, partners will understand why some others forget, but
I don't think there's any understanding.
No, I mean, the man might forget.
The world shouldn't be that hard.
But the woman... Okay, Marpa is going to have his dinner later. Sorry?
Should the world be that hard if anybody can
ask the woman?
Forget,
Yeah, I mean,
ask, but not something that important. I mean, there are a few dates that are important. Your birthday, the anniversaries,
people
and the rest.
Forget their birthdays too.
Oh yes, absolutely.
You guys don't even understand. You are not females.
It's not
Gentlemen, look, these headlines can make you forget something. You keep seeing them time and again, you deliberately want to forget.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but especially when you look at the food prices. When you look at, you saw Business Incorporated yesterday, you will understand what these things are. No matter whichever way we want to swing it, the facts are right there. And it's the same women that have to go through this. And you now forget important dates in their lives? Come on.
Well, I go through it too. I go to the market.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
There you go.
I try
but
not to.
Yesterday, you remember after Jusun had suspended that strike, and then after 2 long months, I think that's about one of the longest, if not for judiciary workers to ever embark on that kind of strike. Of course, cameras were all over the place trying to see at the courts what's happening. Have they come back? Because the NJC had waded in, so they decided to, all right, we'll let this be for a while. But I think it's just picking up slowly. So they're not rushing back, just trying to see how things would just pick up. It's good to see that this is the situation at the moment. We're hoping that those issues will be addressed. But there were so many meetings today.
So the pile. I don't know if those are cases but it tells a story of how much work needs to be done with this resumption. I wish there would be some sort of statistics as to how many cases were not heard during this process, how many people were denied justice, as it were.
Yeah.
It's mixed feelings for me, really. I want to celebrate this. At the same time, I'm thinking, did we have to go through this? So it's a win plus loss, and it's a lot really for me.
It definitely is both. Yeah. It's a win and a loss. You see those piles of cases. Let's decrypt it. How many divorce cases? I'm going to take you back to the woman. How many divorce cases are hanging? How many land cases are hanging? How many people's lives cannot move forward simply because...
How many people are behind bars?
Absolutely. How many, of course, that's of course, is almost like a norm. Unfortunately so. How many cases have not been heard even when Jusun wasn't on strike? How many cases are pending? How many awaiting trials do we have in the prisons? We know the statistics, when we speak to some of these people in authorities. So when we decrypt these, the real issues here, how many people's lives are on suspension as a result of what we're talking about here now? You can't take certain actions, you can't make certain decisions without the courts making its decisions first. You can't take certain actions. And with Jusun on strike, we can imagine we haven't fully digitized the courts. So consequently, that challenge is there. Maybe this is something that will also help the judiciary to look forward. Because how many judges are that tech savvy to say, okay, even if Jusun is on strike, I can take care of the back-end technology myself. So the issues are there. It
will be interesting to see what happens today. Much later, who knows what the NGF, if they meet, and how would that pan out. And remember some of those states that their governors thought, look, Jusun, you have no business being on strike because we, to a very large extent, are implementing some of these recommendations. So why are you going on strike about this? So who knows? But I thought they said maybe the impression is, look, power in the collective, such that they all decide to do some of these things. But who knows? I guess we'll just wait and see how all of these play out. So, that out of the way, let's take you right into the dailies and see how they reflect what's going on. Take a look at Nigerian Tribune, for instance, speaking about those headlines. Inflation pushed 7 million Nigerians into poverty in 2020. But that's ascribed to the World Bank. So, and then it says, unemployment fuels crime, insecurity. Why does that sound like I was saying this now? Because he's talked about this for a while, almost sound like a broken record, but now it's right there for you. But it needs no telling, does it?
I think it's just a natural, thing. We all know that popular saying, an idle hand. And I don't think an angel will cause insecurity. So, I mean, what? Why are you smiling?
Please go on.
Oh boy. Wow. Then, no gazette established grazing route in Nigeria. Olanik Bekun. Well, he's back on the front pages. Remember him, the SAN. And then look at Land Use Act vests all powers on land in governors, not FG, he adds. Grazing Reserves Law of 1964 was applicable to Northern Region, Falana. So, digging into history now. I think you called for it some days ago. And now you have it.
That's going to be a very interesting one, really, because the president seemed very sure about this, asking the AGF to, in fact, use the term, dig it up, as it were. So, hearing this now, looks like the debate is just getting started.
Wow. Well, it's amazing that there's still politicking going on here. This back and forth with politicians, which you see, we're clearing your rot, APC replies PDP. Justifies huge debt profile. Remember, the PDP governors had met, and then they came up with that resolution about the huge debt profile, the economic policies, insecurity. They talk about Twitter as well. So, yeah, there you go. So, that's well, yesterday had the chairman of the AFCC here, and you can see some reflection. Corruption, high-profile Nigerians after my life. AFCC boss.
Oscar did ask that question.
Yeah.
So, you made him say that.
So, there you go. That's what you see right there. Oh, don't forget, take a look at what you see on the back pages there. And then I see AFN have 2 factions now? 2 presidents? Athletics Federation of Nigeria. You thought,
oh, there was that.
What is going on?
Wow.
What in the world? Well,
there are some things you understand when it happens in political parties, right? Well, not explain it away or condone it, but you can understand. But then when you have, are they political organizations now?
And I understand 2 of them they're training their own teams. They have 2 different athletics teams.
Which one does the Federal Ministry of Sports?
I think that'll be the bottom line. Well, sad.
The lead story for the Vanguard this morning, of course, that's a report and statement from the World Bank saying rise in prices sends 7 million more Nigerians into poverty. But putting in context, that's almost 5% of Nigeria's population, 7 million. So, you see, the writer says prices increasing rapidly, advocates measures to protect poor people from inflation. Nigeria faces interlinked challenges: inflation, insecurity, limited job opportunities, and I imagine some people adding to that list saying, well, there's more. So that's also another writer. MBS reports 17.9% inflation rate for May. Food inflation highest in, Kogi, Kwara, Enugu, Ogun, Anambra. And just one more, Nigeria grappling with worst economic challenge in history, says OPS, that's Organized Private Sector.
That of Kwara and Kogi is ironic, being the routes through which food comes through the north.
So what? They should come here and bring taps.
Don't you think so?
So you think like a pipe that water runs through, at least it gets wet?
You get wet.
It doesn't work that way, though. You all know that. You have to have these delivery policies to ensure certain things work. And so, if you're going to deliver, you can't say because you're going through here, it should not be that high. Well, he pushes your horses, I guess. Who knows?
Well, again, I mean, forgive me, guys. Maybe it's just common sense.
But look, so many people have said, the CBN governor the other day during their MPC meeting, they talk about security, how farmers can't go back to the farms, how they need them to get back to the farms desperately to ensure that these things happen. Because some of the days ago, remember some farmers were defaulting with their loans from Anchor Borrowers program. So all of those are linked. They have this tailback effect. And so some of them, these are the ones that are reported, by the way.
You talked about policies the other time. I'm wondering if there are some information that are lost on us. Early last year, we knew that we were at the risk of a food crisis simply because of the pandemic and the lockdowns. Shortly before or even after that, insecurity literally spiked. Government knew that because I remember we had
before the COVID, they had that meeting. I think it was interministerial committee or meeting.
The police PRO came and said these things are likely to happen. So we knew these things could happen. It's almost common sense that we knew that these things would happen. So what were the things we did? I don't think it's a question of policy.
I think Minister of Works and Housing was also in that committee.
So I don't think this is a question of policy. It's a question of us taking deliberate action to ensure that we saw these things ahead and we mitigated the effects on the people.
Well, you see this one on top of the nameplate about Nigeria to reduce imports by 35% in Q1 2022. That's come from the CBN governor. So if you're reducing the imports, clearly means we're growing the capacity, ensuring that we're meeting that need, because there can never be a void, as it were. So
absolutely.
More details on page 9 might be an interesting read for you. And you have this one from Governor of Ebonyi State saying anti-open grazing laws about people, not governors. Umai says no land for ranching in Southeast. We had him in one of our programs on Sunday. There's Mr. and Mrs. for you. Okay, let's see. You see Mrs. telling Mr. that the doctor advised you take a 30-minute walk every day as a form of exercise. Instead, you popped into your friend's house next door to take pepper soup and wine, then waddled into the house 35 minutes after. And you see Mr. with that pot belly saying, which one didn't I do well? The walk or the timing? We need to know. So that's Mr. and Mrs. for you. Just something I'd like to know. There are a lot of issues, really. But that's Vanguard this morning.
But at least you got something right.
Oh, yes.
Daily Trust this morning is talking about the same food stuff. World Bank counters FG says 7 million Nigerians plunged into poverty. In other words, the federal government is saying we pulled 10.2 million out of poverty, and the World Bank is saying actually it's the reverse. Fall CBN on Forex crisis. We can't afford food and basic needs, citizens. Presidency insists 10 million people lifted out of poverty. Inflation drops by 0.19% in May, so according to the NBS. And there is a statement here in parentheses, tackle issues causing inflation. Find that on the front page of the Daily Trust, leads you to page 5 on the inside pages. NCC begins review of telecom operators' licenses. What's the need for that? Find out the details, maybe it's something periodic. My life under threat, EFCC chairman, we referenced that earlier. And this one, how governors ruined our democracy. Ascribed to Naaba, it's a former Speaker of the House. Find the details right there on the inside pages of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Good morning, Markwe.
Good morning, gentlemen. I've been watching you guys just go on and on. First, I don't know who forgot whose birthday. Somebody forgets his wife's birthday. Just wondering. That discussion about women and how they go to the market, and Kayode saying that he also, what do? You go to the market as well, which is a good thing. But hey, it's good to know, Kayode. Look at this, the front page of The Guardian, and look at what they have for you. Rising prices weaken disposable incomes despite easing inflation. That is what is on the front page of the Guardian this morning. Inflation in May stood at 17.93%, still among highest in 4 years. Inflation pushed 7 million people into poverty in 2020, says World Bank. Critical reforms needed to reduce inflation, accelerate recovery. Federal government urged to liberalize NAFEX window, remove fuel subsidy totally. That conversation. Page 2 is where you find details. The question is, what if this is already the situation with inflation? What effect would removing fuel prices, total subsidy on petrol, what will it have on the economy? Just sometime last month or 2 months ago, there was very strong speculation that the federal government was indeed considering taking away subsidies totally. And there were rumors that the petrol price was going to get to as high as almost 300 and something, almost 400 naira per liter. And that was very scary. Maybe it was just rumor, maybe there was no truth to it, and even just how high petrol prices could get. But imagine for a minute that is the situation, and we're complaining about rising food prices. What will be the situation of the person who is earning 30,000 naira as the minimum wage? It's a big question. I must say though that if you look at this picture, tomatoes, basket of tomatoes, prices of foodstuff remain high despite marginal downward shift in inflation. Sometimes tomatoes might not be a very good indicator, because in the rainy season generally, it is known that tomatoes become really scarce, and the prices of a regular basket of tomatoes in the rainy season would skyrocket. So most times, we men generally avoid eating stew or cooking stew during the rainy season because tomatoes are outrageous. The prices of tomatoes are simply outrageous. And this is in spite of all the investment in the greenhouses that we have. So we have to ask questions as to how effective those greenhouses for vegetables, how effective they are. Look at other stories you'll find here. AstraZeneca cocktail trial fails as Nigeria gets another 3.92 million vaccine doses. They have a number of riders there for you, a number of other stories just beneath the Guardian. But I'll leave you to do that yourself. Let's leave it there for the Guardian newspapers.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at blueprints. Niger governor's angst on 150 kid captives. Bandits, informants in my government. Does that sound familiar? Says, I cannot trust anybody anymore. Slams media for divulging intelligence. Zamfara community seals 200 more troops. Reps urge new chief of army staff to adopt new strategies. So, still huge one here about security. Tribune did report this morning that MTN says they can't guarantee regular services over rising insecurity. So that much Reuters equally reported. And now you have this one, the Niger State governor saying, bandit informants in my government. So
does this in any way lay credence to that statement? I don't know. This is the government of Zamfara that was also saying that there are some politicians who are involved in all of these. And even the president, I remember saying that there is a need to win them back to the side of Nigeria, so to speak.
Who knows? That's blueprints this morning.
Well, leadership, interestingly, leads with that one. Some politicians are informants to bandits. Niger governor says government won't be intimidated by terrorists, criminals. And Boko Haram confirms Shekau's death, denounces ISWAP. And PNB seeks synergy among Sahel countries. So the big one for the leadership is security.
You wonder if they're going to name those politicians? I think Zamfara, you've seen some things going through there too. They made reference to a similar matter, that there are some politicians who are doing. I think Imo State government too says, look, some of this crisis is fueled by politicians. So who are these people? Who are they?
Are they unknown to the DSS?
Unknown politicians?
These things they'll definitely come up from time to time. And that's why we have government. to understand the possibilities of these things and then stay steps ahead. But, with page 4...
Decrypt the government, Cardi, I'm sorry. Decrypt the government. When we say government, who is supposed to let government know? No governor can sit in his office and know these things without him getting the information. Intelligence, guys, remember, that's the primary function of the DSS. So is it that the DSS is unaware of these people? And if the DSS is aware, aren't they supposed to be what they call persons of interest?
Could it be they're waiting for adequate information to name them or charge them to court so that everybody can see who has been charged to court for certain things? Who knows? Well, the courts are open now anyway.
Speaking of an issue that maybe courts might decide, who knows? It says Twitter founder Jack Dorsey liable for NSA's losses. FG says he raised bitcoins to sponsor protests. So I think the government has been reiterating that ever since the NSA's protest. So we'll see how this one plays out.
Nigerian News Direct is interested in the inflation story. Inflation hike drags 7 million Nigerians into poverty. That's the lead of the paper this morning. Page 3 has that story, and of course so many others of that you can catch on. President Buhari flags off construction of NLNG Train 7 project. It's actually very big because it's been on for something in the region of 15 to 20 years, and now this. So hope it brings the good news, so to speak, to Nigeria. As the Nigerian News Direct this morning.
Telegraph has this one. It was some huge excerpts from the interview we had here with the EFCC chairman. Corruption, $20 million cash evacuated from minister's home. Bauer reveals. Says EFCC uncovered $37.5 million in minister bank MD property deal. States real estate now choice sector for money laundering. We created e-wallet to recover cryptocurrency. Is also a quote there. But you might want to read all the details on page 2. That's as if you missed the interview here yesterday. Of course, you can also go online if you want. Look at this. Inflation pushed 7 million Nigerians into poverty. That's according to the World Bank. It's still right there on the front page of New Telegraph. Drops to 17.9% as economy tilts towards recovery. You have a number of other stories at the bottom here. Aside Ebonyi, Ebuwago is dead in Southeast. Governors keep mute after Umahi resigned as coordinator. Bureaucratic bottlenecks frustrated him. That's according to Ohaneze. Scorpion Squad storms Oka as jailbreakers unleash terror. Pages 3 and 6 will give you all the details. But guys, have you noticed in recent times how sometimes some words are used interchangeably and they mean different things to different people? NSARS, for instance, was an acronym or was a hashtag that was developed to protest police brutality in Nigeria. And that was what the protest was about. But it would look like right now when government uses that term, they're referring to those who destroyed property of everyday Nigerians in the aftermath of the protest, and oftentimes those words are used interchangeably, and I think that some things are really dangerous when you look at how words are beginning to, some words increasing, and it's not just NSAS. I have a few more examples, which are used interchangeably, and we really need to be very careful. But let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Yeah, so that wraps it up with a look at some of the dailies as well this morning. We will be back in a moment. Do stay with us.
from the north to the southern part of the country, governors elected on the platform of the People's Democratic Party arrived at the Akwa Ibom Government House in Uyo, the state capital. Straight away, they head to the banquet hall for the business of the day, a deliberation on the state of the nation, after which journalists are allowed in.
My dear colleagues, gentlemen of the press,
the chairman of the forum reels out a 14-point communique with particular attention to the operational system of the NNPC, the Central Bank of Nigeria, and other revenue-generating agencies.
It decried the recent NNPC's decision not to make a statutory contribution to the Federation account, thereby starving the states and local government, and indeed Nigerians, of funds. The meeting observed that the CBN has become such an octopus that it treats its present state governments publicly without decorum about sanctions on any attempt, questions its modus operandi.
They're also calling for quick intervention over the rising debt profile of the country while demanding a new revenue-sharing formula.
With over 80% of normal appropriation at the national level spent on debt servicing, all the gains of the PDP government under Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, PCFR, where Nigeria exited its foreign debt obligations, has been destroyed. The forum reiterated its call, which seemed to have fallen on deaf ears, for the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission to urgently send the revised revenue allocation formula to Mr. President for onward transmission to the National Assembly for enactment.
The raging controversy over the ban on Twitter operations and security concerns are not left out.
And a lot of Nigerians rely on Twitter for their livelihood, businesses and self-employment. This will further worsen Nigeria's 33% unemployment rate, which is the highest in the world. The meeting called for more involvement of states in mining and geophysical activities within their states. This is necessary not just to curtail harm to the environment, but to further diversify the Nigerian economy and complement oil as a foreign exchange earner for Nigeria. It lamented the fact that Mr. President seemed not to be aware that the coercive instrument of state security is firmly within his hands and not governors.
While they scheduled their next meeting to hold in Calabar, the Cross River State capital, the PDP governors are hopeful that the decisions made here will help reshape the policies of government in the interest of all Nigerians.
Welcome back. Well, taking a look at the state of the policy and some of the policies and suggestions. We've got Sanju Samson, as you've seen there, former spokesperson of the PDP campaign, presidential campaign council. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, yeah, different policies. Yeah, so we've heard and seen the governors of the PDP did meet, suggesting certain operations be altered, economic policies be reviewed for better results. You know, but one wonders, perhaps just benefit of hindsight or looking back at how things have been before now, do you think the party reflects on possibly saying, well, for instance, they spoke about the operations of the NNPC, how they think that, well, some policies of the operations not exactly going well. And we also do remember that there was this conference and several calls trying to see how they could restructure or rearrange institutions for better performance. Do you think perhaps with the benefit of hindsight, they think, well, who knows, if we had taken certain steps about the economics, the policies, we may have been functioning perhaps differently, if not better today, all of what's going on notwithstanding?
Yes, I think what the PDP governors are trying to say, putting it succinctly, is that the economy as it is now is non-functional. It is not carrying the necessary mechanisms that will make the economy function very well. Those institutions that are supposed to give bite to the economy, are not functioning as it should. the Central Bank of Nigeria, the NMPC, and so forth and so on. So what we are saying in general is that the NMPC should remit optimally what it is due to the Federation account. The CBN should also perform its statutory functions as it should, so that monies accruable to the states will be functional and will give the necessary impetus for the economy to thrive. We are in a situation now where everything within the economy is not functioning as it should. And that is very important, that the economy should be allowed to function optimally. That way, it will give room for states and other tiers of government, states and local government, to function well, because what is due to them will be given to them, and they will be able to spend and remove the Nigerians from the current poverty situation that we are facing. You know, some of these things are not far-fetched. They are not very difficult to address. But unfortunately, the APC-led government is not doing enough to ensure that they put all these machineries and all these institutions in proper perspective, that they should perform their constitutionally assigned roles within the polity.
Part of what I was trying to refer to, part of what I was trying to refer to is, remember at that time, former President Yar'Adua tried to unbundle the NNPC into 5 companies at that time, saying, look, they needed to get it a lot more functional moving forward. So I thought that was what I was asking, benefits of hindsight, perhaps, if that had happened, don't you think that perhaps, who knows, we may have been performing way beyond what you say is not going on right?
Yeah, if you take a look, even when the APC government came, what they said was that the PDP was using the NNPC as a cash cow, and that they were going to unbundle it. It is now practically almost impossible for the law to unbundle the NNPC to be effective. Up till now, there is no any tangible move to actualize the petroleum industry bill, you know, that will unbundle the NNPC and make the petroleum industry, very functional and and very competitive. It is still a monopoly. It is still the way they have said they have met it, and they are even making it more worse with the way they are running the NNPC. So I think unbundling it and making it more operational, more competitive, more challenging, will give room for other players outside the industry, or who are within the industry, to come in fully and participate. And by that, it will make it much more productive to our economy.
In terms of the states and their performance, job creation in different states, there are those who always ask that, look, what is the impediment? Why is it that states don't seem to be taking the bull by the horn and ensure that they ramp up the environment and job creation opportunities for residents in those states, that there are enough policies to ensure that they actually do that and jumpstart their own economy in their own way?
You see, the problem we're having is that most states look at job creation as if they will take from their statutory allocations and from their internally generated revenue to fund or to pay salaries and wages. Try as they may, that is not the general policy. First, the environment must be good for investments. When there are a lot of investors, job opportunities are created. And how do you, make ease of doing business very acceptable? you try to reduce all this on the costs associated with doing business. Now, if the cost of land, the cost of labor, the cost of all the necessary costs are high, how would investors come in and invest? More so when there is no power and one has to do, what he has to do to generate power and to use power. It becomes highly very impossible. So states naturally ought to have gone into other ventures that will key in a lot of people, and that venture perhaps includes agriculture, in various segments, and other ventures that are very important. They can also partner with very big, very influential business people who will now come in, to come and invest in the state and ensure that jobs are created. The more the jobs are created, the more the economy improves. For instance, when railways is the job of railway in the federal government, for instance, from Lagos to Ibadan, a minimum of about 2,000 people have been employed. And within that period, the multiplier effect will be that, quite a lot of people will gain from such development. So it is very important that the states should key in, not to always look at income and expenditure and say, okay, we are not doing well here, we are doing well here, and then we will not spend much money here, or we will spend money here. Now, if the states are not mindful of the problems, the poverty level of their states, they will naturally make their states look like a business concern. And essentially, the responsibility of government is for the welfare and security of the people.
Yeah, just for a moment. Earlier, when you started to talk about, in response to Chamberlain's question, you were talking about insecurity and enabling environment and all of that. What do you think the governors can do about that? And are you saying that the governors are helpless completely? Because sincerely, when you started talking, it sounded like you were making excuses for the governors.
No. Naturally, I wasn't making excuses for the governors. The governors are, of course, expected to perform statutory responsibilities. However, most of them are hiding under the fact that what they are getting from statutory allocations, from the federation account, and what they get from their internally generated revenue has to be spent, it has to be in tandem with their spending. Now, that is where the crux of the matter is. The point is that government is not a business. Now, in business, you look at profit and loss. However, in governance, you look at the welfare of the people, what is very paramount. Now, most governors now are looking at what can generate money than what can, contribute to the positive life of the people. So I'm not making any excuses for them. I'm saying that they should also beam their satellite on other issues that are very relevant and very important in the in ensuring that poverty is alleviated or is completely banished, and that the people have an enabling environment to thrive, to do business, to for jobs to be created, for people to be able to go out and earn their daily living, and so forth and so on. So governors have a huge role to play. However, I'm not also saying that they should rely only on the federal government. They should also look inwards. Now, there are so many things that are untapped within the states that the governors can look into and find ways and means to ensure that their people benefit from such untapped potentials. Now, these are the very fundamental issues that we should follow, religiously, to ensure that our people
of this information, some of these opportunities that you talk about are even unknown to the people, because the policies may be there. You know that many people are not aware of so many laws, enabling laws that can help them to take advantage of opportunities in their immediate environment. You've mentioned agriculture. Are there other opportunities that you think people should be taking advantage of, especially in the various states where they reside?
Yeah, it depends on what the natural resources of the state. If, for instance, a state like Ondo has a lot of bitumen, where other states, they are endowed with natural resources. Zamfara State has gold. Kaduna State, has gold in Benungwari, about 2,000 tons of gold, and so forth and so on. So, when you apply for license from the federal government, official mining can take place. And so there are so many opportunities. Apart from even natural resources, there are other, resources that one can, endeavor to use, in terms of land, labor, and so forth and so forth. So it is left for the, the investor to look at which is the best place for him to invest. For instance, if you want to do some farming, Jigawa State, Kano State, and the rest are very good fertile grounds for this. Now, if you want to maybe you need land for developments, estate, real estate, and so forth and so on, there are certain states, for instance, Kaduna, whose proximity or continuity is closer to Abuja. You can build houses so that people can live in Kaduna and use the train to go to Abuja to work and so forth. So these are areas where people can key in, and make life bearable for the ordinary person.
Okay, let's talk about some other.
In Abuja is high.
Yeah, let's talk about some other. Another level of conversation of this conversation. Talking about collaboration. I think it was 2019 or thereabout, or 20. I'm not very, very sure exactly when now. The president made that suggestion, that commitment, that he wants 100 million Nigerians lifted out of poverty over 10 years. And he said it would happen in collaboration with the states. Now, the federal government says it has pulled out 10.2 million people out of poverty over the past 2 years or thereabout. The question I'd like to ask you is, in terms of collaboration, how do you see it happening? Do you even see it happening significantly? Now, when you talked about mineral resources, there is no way that's going to happen without the collaboration of the federal and state governments. It's actually quite ironic, because the land is under the purview of the governors, but the mineral resources under that ground is in the purview of the federal government. So collaboration there, therefore, has to happen. How do you see that collaboration happening? Do you think it's happening well enough, significantly enough, impactfully enough? If not, what do we need to do?
You see, number one, let me set the record straight. It is very difficult, to understand the parameters that the federal government has used to say that they have lifted 10.5 million people out of poverty. Whatever parameters it is, it should also be noted that if 10.5 million people have been lifted out of poverty, another 10.5 or 20.5 million have also already gone into poverty, because there is no way that in this spiraling economy where money, everything that is going continuously up every day, you cannot wake up today and say, okay, let me go and buy pure water 10 naira, and you are sure that you are going to get it at 10 naira. You may be shocked to go and meet it at 20 or 30 naira. So how could you have lifted anybody out of such a debilitating situation within the country, where people are finding it difficult to even feed? Now, coming to your point, it is also instructive for us to understand that it is difficult per se for mining to take place without the active collaboration of the federal government, because mining licenses are only obtained from the federal government, even though land that belongs to the states. However, such collaboration can actually take place. For instance, I just read that the Zamfara state governor has set up a task force to ensure that illegal mining doesn't take place in Zamfara state. Now, if that task force is able to conclude its assignment and to ensure that illegal mining doesn't take place, then Zamfara state government can collaborate with the federal government. If they want to engage in mining, or they have investors in mining, or that other investors are interested in mining, Zamfara State government can assist the investors if they are given the prospective license to come to Zamfara State, and they will show them all the necessary things to do so that they will start official mining, and then the people of the state and even people outside the state who are Nigerians will benefit from such a venture. So I am of the opinion that we should put a lot of our money in trying to find out areas where our people will benefit in terms of investment. Let me give you one specific example, where when the former president of the the present president of the African Development Bank, when he was Minister of Agriculture, he was the first person to have brought in to improve the rice capacity of Kebbi State by ensuring that investors come to invest in rice mills in Kebbi and in Taraba State. Americans were there in Taraba to invest in rice mills. So, even the milling, was also an industry. From one mill in Kebbi, it became about 26 before he left. Now, that is to tell you that with 26 rice mills, the job opportunity has now increased because there are 26 mills that are milling the rice that is being produced in Kebbi State. And so a lot of people are gainfully engaged, and they are now producing this rice, which is now permeating the country. You can imagine, Kebbi State, at the inception of this administration, right, where they were partnering with Lagos State to ensure that they bring rice to Lagos.
Well, Mr. Omar, I'd like us to also touch on security, because I know it's related to anything economy and, in fact, the success of any nation. And part of the things the PDP governor said is that they're asking for decentralization of the operations of security apparatus. And it sounded like a response to the president when he said that, the governors should fix the security in their state. That's why they were elected. And he asked that what happened to the grassroots security panels and the rest. And like I said, he asked the governors to go back and fix those systems. So it appears as though the president's idea of how things should work regarding security is quite different from what the PDP governors are saying should be done with security. The question lies, which one is the way forward, really?
You see, the issue of security is a very complex one. While the governors are left with GOCs within their states, they are left with commissioners of police within their states, they are left with directors of SSS or DSS within their states, some very key security apparatuses within their states. They do not have power to direct them to do anything. If they direct them, they will have to look for authority from their boss, who is also answerable to the president and commander-in-chief. That is where the security issue is of paramount concern. Now, the governors is not as if they are incapable of addressing these issues. However, the slow pace at which they will have to now call for a security meeting, which is normally weekly, to review the security situation in their respective states, they will also have to now seek the cooperation of the relevant agency. If it is the army will now, the GOC will now have to contact the Chief of Army Staff, who will now have to contact Mr. President, who will now give the necessary directive as to what ought to have been done or what is to be done. Now, if what the governor is thinking of how to operate within the state is different from what the president is thinking, then there is a problem. There is a lacuna. So there has to be somewhere that they must agree on certain measures that has to be taken to ensure that security is properly addressed. This type of, and of course, other issues that come up is the lack of synergy between security agencies. Now, everybody is competing for himself. Now, the police don't want the DSS to know what they are doing. The DSS don't want the police to know what they are doing. The army wants to be independent from other security agencies and so forth and so on. So it becomes very difficult if there is no synergy for them to put their heads together to ensure that people are adequately secured. So the governors, in essence, are saying clearly that if you want us to function optimally, then give us the necessary impetus. Otherwise, constitutionally, statutorily, you are responsible for securing Nigeria. Our job is only to assist you. And in assisting you, we have been doing it. We have been giving maybe vehicles. We have been giving all the necessary tools for the security agencies to function optimally within our states. However, we don't have the power.
Okay, then. All right, Mr. Sanyuma, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Well, back in a moment. Don't go away.
President said, go home and solve your problem. Go home and solve your security problem. But let me also tell Mr. President too, yes, he has said the security issues is left in the state. How about our president? Not be so. The Constitution didn't say that. Who is the commander-in-chief? Are we the governor or commander-in-chief? We are not commander-in-chief. Mr. President, you are the commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You appoint IG. You appoint Chief of Army Staff. You appoint Chief of Naval Staff. You appoint Director D. Which one do we appoint? CP, I don't appoint. Director here, no be me. Commander here, no be me. Which one again you say they are under me? They are not under me. You are the one controlling. Okay, allow us now to pick who will be CP for ourselves. Allow us to pick who will be in charge of SSF. Then you will see whether it will be the same thing. Because they cannot act until they take powers from you. We cannot tell them do this, they do. If I call my CP now, it's okay, let me call IG. Who appointed IG? Not the president. IG is okay, hold on first. Let me clear with Oga. So why are we shifting the goalposts when the match is almost completed? Politics is what impact, positive impact, am I going to make for my people? It is not how much money in your pocket. Because whether you like it or not, there can be no money you can give to every person that will be enough here. But today, these people, the community here, can go to their farms easily, can bring whatever they produce in the farms and go and sell in the market.
Well, yes. Okay, Governor of Rivers State, they're giving some insights into some of the things we're going to be discussing this morning. We have with us Ismaila Ahmed, who is a national youth leader of the All Progressives Congress Caretaker Committee and also senior special advisor to the President on Special Intervention. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, naturally, government, the purpose of government and governance is to provide security and welfare of the people. And it would seem that increasingly there's been plenty of talk, maybe a lot of discontent, it would seem, in terms of the area of security, maybe going by the headlines or maybe going by the interest, the increasing interest that a lot of people are showing in the constitutional amendment process currently ongoing. Some people are asking for a brand new constitution. Some others are saying, they believe that the constitution is sometimes at the heart of the problem. The reason why we have not been able to make the kind of strides that we ought to make as a people. From your perspective, as a member of the ruling party and also as a member of as a leader of the youth wing of the APC, what are your thoughts on where we currently are and why you think we're here?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Although this is not what I, envisaged that we would be talking about, especially in terms of security, because I always try to stay away from talking about security in particular, because I'm not a security expert. But nevertheless, As a member of the governing party, because we're not a ruling party, we're a governing party, my take is that security situation is always very complicated. And thank God that there is an effort to amend the Constitution. And like you said, some people believe that the Constitution is at the heart of the problem. Listening to the governor of Rivers State talk about that they are not in charge of security agencies in their states. Well, it is very convenient for state governors to say that when it is time to actually effect security measures. But when it is time for elections, believe me, they know how to coalesce and coordinate the same security agents that they complain are not under their control to a particular destined outcome to get what they want. And what the president simply said is that government is not made up of the president or the federal government alone. Government is different levels of tiers of government. And each one has a certain architecture or security network that is supposed to deal with or is supposed to be handling, be it the traditional rulers, be it whatever it is that is at whatever level they have right now. And it's not up to the president. President alone cannot sit down in the villa and decide that I'm decentralizing the security tomorrow and then tomorrow it is decentralized. It's not going to happen. That has to go through the process of legal, the amendment of the Constitution, which is currently going on. And every state has representation in the National Assembly, both in the reps and in the Senate. So I think it's about time that we stop all this talk and overheating the polity about who is to blame for what and actually get to the bottom of dealing with this problem. The APC has already made its position clear in our 2018 Constitutional Review Committee report that was headed by Malam Nasir Ahmed El-Rufai, Governor of Kaduna State. And then I was a member of that committee in the APC that we came up with our own suggestions. Those things have been streamlined into bills. We have submitted them. We have submitted them as sponsored bills from the party to our members to be able to push for it in the National Assembly and during the Constitutional Amendment. And I think it's about time that governors stop passing the blame and shouting about this security architecture in this country and actually focus on what needs to be done to be able to get this right. And I totally agree that there should be some sort of a more sphere of responsibility and more power in the hands of local leaders, local political leaders, as opposed to what is obtainable right now, be it community policing, be it whatever name they will call it. That's my personal belief. And I think it should be pushed and let's deal with the problem the way it should be dealt with, as opposed to just passing the blame.
You say that the governor shouldn't pass the blame. They might say that the president passed the blame first. That he is the one who seems to be shirking responsibility.
No, absolutely not.
And sending it right their way when they really do not. What they can actually do is assist and argument and do all the things. In terms of buying
and in helping, they could also stop making inflammatory statements all the time to keep flaming up tensions that happen in their local communities, in their states, and so many things like that. What segment would you consider inflammatory?
No,
there are a lot of inflammatory statements by local leaders. I don't have to go to specific, but there were a lot of inflammatory statements by local leaders in terms of whenever there are issues, especially ethnic or religious related. It always becomes a problem. It exacerbates and metastasizes into something that becomes a serious security issue. But the point is, the president, you and I both know that the president cannot sit down alone as president and decide to decentralize security tomorrow. He cannot do that. That can only be done through constitutional amendment. That's the process that is ongoing. And let's stick to that and make sure that we get whatever we feel should be the corrective measures in that regard, as opposed to passing the blame.
It would seem that, on the one hand, it is easy to say, the National Assembly has the total responsibility
but they
to
do
be
have
able.
That.
Indeed, they do have the total responsibility to amend the Constitution. But on the other hand, it would seem that if you do not push, if this are some of the changes that your party promised, and you also have it's one of the reasons why you say you need the leadership of the National Assembly to be in tandem with the executive arm of government. Why are we yet to see that push on the part of the executive towards achieving, and by push I also mean will I say some pressure from on the part of the executive to see these changes, if truly they are the heart of what is holding our development back as a country?
Of course they are. There's a lot of pressure from the party. We pushed our bills, we streamlined them, we took our reports, 2018 report, we put them into bills, we submitted it to our members, we kept telling them at every meeting that we've had that we really want this to be done. And every meeting we coordinate this, we talk about it. Some people that have reservations, they raise their reservations. We talk about it. We try to, to go over the gray areas where other people have reservations for whatever reason that they have the reservations, and we talk about it. We keep pushing. So there is pressure from us in the party to our members to be able to push this, but it needs to come from the National Assembly first. And National Assembly is not just about the leadership of National Assembly. They are presiding officers. There needs to be debates. There needs to be this.
Don't forget that 2018 was the year preceding 2019. The leadership of the National Assembly in 2018 has since changed in 2019.
We never give the leadership of the National Assembly as the reason for not pushing it. When we finished the report in 2018, it took time for us to serialize it. We were going to election in 2019. It had to be stopped. So we went for election. We came back. We gave it to our members ending 2019 to 2020. Well, of course, most of 2020 was gone because of the pandemic. But yeah, we're pushing it. And now there's constitutional amendment going on. And we hope that they would be able to look at that report.
What are some of the changes that you're pushing for as a party?
Well, in terms of security, I think there's a lot of talk about community policing. I think there are lots of recommendations about the need for us to dissect and give some certain of responsibility to local leaders at the local level, especially community level. In terms of security, very important. And the recruitment drive of the numbers and manpower of security agencies needs to go up astronomically. There's no doubt about it, because we are seriously undermanned in terms of police. We're seriously under police. We're seriously, even the army are doing the job of almost everyone. They're doing the job of internal security, the external security, they're fighting insurgents, they're keeping peace, they're doing roadblocks. We just feel that there's an overstretch of a lot of this, and it will keep going on because there are a lot of fault lines in this country that people can just flame up at given notice, at very short notices. So there is need for a serious community policing. Now, part of the suggestion that a lot of people brought on was the fact that we need to recruit police officers, for example, and leave them in their localities. The president gave an order in the first tenure to have about 10,000 police officers to be recruited. Even that is not enough. I think we need to do a lot more than that. We need a lot more than that. I don't know what the statistics are right now, but I think we need a lot more than just 10,000 police officers. But it's a good start if we could do that. And then we can incrementally go on and then make it to about 100,000, 200,000 more police officers in this country. Because we are 200 million strong. From the statistics I get, we're less than 500,000 police officers. It's simply unbelievable. It's simply not enough.
Ismaila, you must concede that the change your party promised in 2015 is not what Nigerians have received today. I don't know if you will concede that much to Nigerians.
What change did we promise that we didn't give, precisely?
What change did you promise? Let's start from there.
You are the one that were putting it to me. You were putting it to me that the change we promised. So what change did we promise?
Let's start from the areas. Let's start from the key areas where the president promised security.
Believe me, a lot of people in the Northeast will not agree with you.
So the Northeast was the biggest issue on the front burner
as of 2014, 2015.
As of 2014.
And 2015.
It's still an issue today. There's still huge questions
yes,
as to whether or not
at the same level of frequency, not at the same level of tempo. Certainly you would
perhaps
agree with that.
indeed not at the same level. I mean, there was a time when we made so much progress that the federal government did come out to say that, oh, the insurgents had been defeated. Then later on they modified that to technically defeated. But today, if we ask the governor of Borno State whether or not insurgents are holding ground in Borno, I'm sure he would answer in the affirmative, that there are some areas.
Are you sure he would answer, or he has answered? Which one is it?
So perhaps.
No, I'm asking you. Has he answered that they're holding grounds right now? But I don't want us to get into the semantics of what is happening. There is an insecurity situation still in this country. There's no doubt about it. No government or no country would ever get rid of insecurity in its entirety. None would ever do that. And I remember there's a lot of statistics we've seen about the United States of America and how many times that there was gun violence of people walking into malls or churches or synagogues and killing people at will. And I can't remember how many times President Obama in his 8 years of presidency has condoled the country, has gone to burial sites and the funeral arrangements because of that. Trump did it in his 4 years, and Biden is facing it as well. So no one government would get rid of insecurity in its entirety. Insecurity metamorphoses from one point to another. But to tell me that the problem that we came and met as at 2014, the one that we promised that we are going to do our best to make sure that we put a stop to, which was mostly the northeastern problem of insurgency and terrorism, has not come down. I don't think anybody who lives in the northeast, be it in Maiduguri all the way down to Taraba, would agree with you on that. But have there been other issues of insecurity since then? Absolutely. I'm from the Northwest, and I know that we have serious issues of banditry in the Northwest today. And I know that the security agencies are doing their best to make sure that we nip that in the bud. It was a phenomenon that grew, that we didn't see it coming. It became what it has become, and we're doing our best to make sure that we tackle it. And we have to reorient the citizenry to believe that security is a collaborative effort between the government and the governed, in the sense that there has to be a community that is not willing to harbor criminals. There has to be a community that is willing to give information. There has to be a community that is willing to protect itself in terms of giving information to the authorities as at when due. If I have a small community in Kano, for example, and recently it has been happening in Kano, and you have say, for example, a community of 100 or 200 people, there's usually a traditional system of having miungwa, that is usually like a district head or a village head or whatever. Whoever comes to that place, whoever comes to that village and he wants to buy a plot of land or he wants to lease a plot of land to do either farming or build or do a shop or build a house, he needs to inform the local leader there. The local traditional leader would have a chain of command to report it to other people. So we have to sanitize and find out, scrutinize who we are dealing with. Unless we bring back those kind of local arrangements in making sure that we know who we are dealing with, no matter how minute or remote a village is, we are going to continue to have problems of security that we may not foresee. But to tell me that this government has not done incredibly well in terms of dealing with the issues of insurgency, especially in the Northeast, I would absolutely not agree with you on that.
Incredibly well.
Yes, in terms of the Northeast.
It's a pretty high score to give yourself, especially when you look at the number of lives.
Do you know how many times bombs were going off?
Ismail, if I may put in my question.
Prior to 2015, do you know how many times bombs are going off, including in Abuja? You know it.
So if I may put in my question now, I mean, you have acknowledged the fact that indeed you cannot see all the security situations that will come up when, they do come up. Some of them you might be able to foresee, because the president did talk about how the dislodgement of terrorists in the northeast has also caused, them to come down and, wreak havoc in other areas. Perhaps what has also caused the banditry problem in the northwest. So you might not be able to foresee everything. Some of them you might be able to predict, but I think at the end of the day, it's about how you handle.
I can assure you that for every one insecurity situation you see, God forbid, for every one attack you see, God knows how many were prevented by the security agencies that you never get to know about.
Indeed. So the reference right now you made to the United States about how the presidents there have handled the security situation.
I have not talked about how they've handled it.
You did. You talked about
funerals.
Exactly. You talked about them attending funerals. It's part of the way to reach out to the people and comfort them. One of the accusations against the president is that he's been pretty aloof. I think that's one of the things he tried to address in his Democracy Day speech, that, any incident that happens affects him as well, because it's one of the accusations that some Nigerians have made that the president appears rather aloof. How do you explain this? That, people keep dying. I mean, let's look at even what is happening in Niger State, the children that have been abducted. There's been not a word from the presidency as to what has happened in Niger State. That children, mere children, almost 200 of them kidnapped, and they're yet to be returned to their parents how many days after? How do we explain that? We saw the rampant kidnappings in Kaduna. Even as we speak, another group of students have been kidnapped as well. We saw what happened in Jos, in Plateau State, in Benue State. These incidences happen almost on a daily basis. And oftentimes, not a word, not a whimper do we hear from the presidency.
First of all, I would disagree with this oftentimes that the president doesn't speak. Now, you're dealing with a situation where I've heard a lot of people complain that the president is always saying he is shocked, he's this. Now,
those are statements from the presidency.
Hold on. Statements from the presidency.
It's not quite the same thing as the president speaking.
Hold on. I am not a spokesman for the president. And I'm sure you would have ample opportunity to ask the president's spokesman about certain things that has to do directly with the president. I'm representing a political party. But I would say this. I know this president because I know him pretty well. I know he cares about a lot of these things, and I know he takes his time before he makes certain statements on certain issues. You would agree with me that whenever these things happen, the president needs to be fully briefed and informed and debriefed about what is going on. And I think this is the only president that most of the kids, at least the ones in Katsina and Zamfara, that were abducted, I remember, I think sometime last year, or was it early this year, I can't remember, were almost returned almost immediately, like a week later or so, thereabout. I'm sure when the president went to Katsina at that time. So it's not as if government is not doing anything or the president doesn't care. I don't think that is true. I think the president cares a lot. Sometimes he waits and tarries a bit before he makes statements. And then his spokespeople do that on his behalf. Whenever there is need for him to speak directly, he does, like you've seen in the interviews that he has granted. Basically, I'm more interested in the president doing what he's doing, making sure that he holds security meetings, he charges his security chiefs and people who are responsible for this to do whatever it takes to make sure that not only do the ones who have been affected directly are brought back safely, but that it doesn't happen again. I think that is the job of the president. If you're asking me, should he show up every time that there is something of this magnitude, an abduction or killings of this magnitude? Maybe I would encourage him to do so. But I also understand that for whatever reason that sometimes he does it through his spokespeople, I think he has a pretty good reason for that. I'm not going to second guess him. All I know is that he cares about this country. He is doing the best he can, and he makes sure that he charges his security agencies to deliver on their mandate.
You know, it would seem that the disillusionment that a lot of young people feel about government and governance in general was the protest we saw with NSAS. And sadly, the aftermath of that protest, it would seem, is all that government sees these days, because the destruction was unprecedented in the aftermath. But the real protest, the people, what they were asking for, the young people, what they were asking for was an end to police brutality, which they felt was in the way of them achieving economic prosperity. And they were being harassed. To your mind, what has the APC, let me put it that way, because you lead the APC now, have you been able to, see that as an opportunity to perhaps, get young people involved in government?
Absolutely, and I think that's why we're having a conference on Monday, and that's why the president is declaring that conference open. And he is going to speak to young people, at least of the party, for the first time since the inception of the party in 2013, which is about 8 years now. For the first time, we're having the largest and big conference of young progressives converging in Abuja. The president is declaring some of our biggest leaders are going to be there, and we're going to talk about, because there needs to be a conversation between the leaders and the led, between those who would be in the future and those who are making those decisions for the future. And I think it's an opportunity for young people and even the leaders of the party to take this opportunity and sit down and be able to converse, because there seems to be a misunderstanding of the wavelength and the thinking of young people. And we are both antagonistic towards each other in most cases, because the young people disregard the older people as if they are not out of touch with reality. They don't think the same way we think. They don't see the things we see, or they don't read the way we read.
Do you think that was crystallized in the Twitter ban?
No, I think so. But let me just finish this. That's why we're having that conference. It's the biggest conference, and I want, and I'm glad that the president is going to be there, the vice president is going to be there, and all the leaders of the party are going to be there, and for us to have that conversation, because I think that nexus needs to be seriously strengthened between the leaders and the led. And the young progressives need to know that this is an opportunity, because they are 60% of the party and the country. The issue of the Twitter ban, people have asked me as a young person, what do I think of Twitter ban? And I ask them simply, do you want me to choose a foreign company over my country? It's not going to happen. The patriot in me will not allow me to do that. I think that a foreign company that has no legal representation or personality in this country cannot have the kind of power to cause a national security issue like Twitter has without some sort of a backlash. As a young person, I want to tweet every day. I want to have an opportunity to say my mind. I want to be able, I get informed by Twitter every day. So I hope that there will be some sort of resolution, because I heard, I don't know if it's true, that Twitter has tried to reach government. And I think government on our own part too, what we have not done, which we should do, is to have some sort of a formal liaison or a communication channel between us and these major companies that reach far more of our citizens than the conventional media does. And yet, we do not have a channel of communication with them. That should have happened immediately after NSAS. And we should have had that kind of communication with Twitter, with Facebook, with WhatsApp, with Instagram, so that things like this could be resolved without getting to the stage that it got to. But the fact that a foreign company can bring down a tweet of a certain president just because they feel that what he said was wrong, even though in the context of which he said it, there was absolutely nothing wrong with what the president said, I think it's absolutely unacceptable. No company should have that kind of power over a sovereign nation like ours.
Well, on this point, we have to say thank you for coming on Sunrise Today this morning. Ismaila Ahmed is a national youth leader of the All Progressives Congress, that's the Caretaker Committee, and also the senior special advisor or assistant now? SSA, assistant to the president on special intervention. Well, that's it for this segment. Sunrise Today will continue in a moment. Please stay with us.
So I'm also being told that
it's another edition in the series of Nigeria's Development Update, this time covering the first 6 months of 2021. According to the World Bank's country director for Nigeria, the report is a bitter pill to swallow, but the reality of Nigeria's economic progress.
Nigeria is at a critical juncture. Nigeria has so much potential, but that potential has not been realized. And with the COVID crisis, the pressures on the economy, the pressures on society.
The country's inflation rate is expected to exceed 16% in 2021, and at least 11 million jobs are also projected to be lost, a situation that's been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic, insecurity and global fall in price of oil.
The falling in purchasing prices has resulted in an increase of 7 million more Nigerians in extreme poverty. So then, as a result, there's no surprise that if we have lower per capita incomes, less purchasing power because of higher inflation, we have few job opportunities, there's no surprise that we're going to see higher insecurity and conflict.
After the presentation, it's time to evaluate the report, and panelists, including chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, give their views.
Nigerians must see that change in our lifestyle. If we want PMS to go, then many of us have to reduce our convoys to 3-4 vehicles. Those are the kind of practical steps that we must take in order to address some of these issues that the World Bank is highlighting.
Nigeria, for me, is not a rich country. Nigeria is a poor country. You have seen the revenue streams that have been shown, the projections, the way they are coming, and then when you compare them with the expenditure. And that is why a number of reforms are being put in place.
This report, tagged Resilience Through Reforms, also highlights Nigeria's progress in the area of electricity supply, tax reform and other critical factors of economic growth.
Despite the horrific statistics, the belief is that Nigeria can still come out of the wood by ensuring that revenue generation is increased, and that also means looking at the agriculture sector. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed. To make sense from crunching those numbers, Mr. Kola Ayeye joins us next. He's an economist and CEO of Asset Management. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, Chamberlain.
Oh, yes, indeed. We've seen the figures from the NBC saying Nigeria's inflation rate dropped to 17.9% thereabout, 93. So is that a good thing for you or what?
Well, you know, the inflation rates dropped, and that's a fact. But you're still at a very high absolute rate. Clearly, a 17.9 or 18% inflation rate is extremely high, and it doesn't give much cause for celebration. What we need to do is worry about how to bring it much, much further down. You need inflation that is in the single digits so that you can keep interest rates in the single digit and you can achieve growth. So we are far away from where we need to be.
But how does it work? I mean, how does inflation rate drop, but we still see rising food prices? Is it supposed to have some sort of impact or effect on those as well?
Well, the drop is marginal. You know, if you had inflation that was, I think, north of 15 or 16%, you know, and the rate of increase drops, you are still in very, very high regions. And then when you look at the makeup of the rates, the highest component of inflation is from food. Food inflation is very high. Food inflation is, in fact, over 20%. I mean, a friend of mine in a forum that I belong to says that he usually used to eat bread and sardine, but he had not eaten it since January. And then he saw somebody eating sardine and he went out to buy. He said he used to buy it at 180 naira. It's now 450 naira. That's reality. I hear a sachet of pure water that used to be 5 naira is now 20 naira. That's reality. So those are not things that will change with a 0.5% or 1% reduction. Those things need major reductions. And the issues are how to drive it down.
You know, they spoken severally about infrastructure development, how all of those are supposed to be connected. I mean, there are so many factors to ensuring that these numbers, perhaps they get it to single digits, which they've been trying for a long time now. So to what extent would you say that, well, those investments in infrastructure is having an impact, or is this still supposed to be a futuristic thing before that kind of impact happens, or what needs to be done to get that desired impact?
Okay, you know, we're right now entering the 7th year of this government. The government has only 2 more years. And I think, stripped of politics, it's just necessary to have a realistic assessment. And I hope consider a change of course. I say this because the World Bank report says clearly that Nigeria is lagging Africa. So it says that Nigeria is projected inflation, according to the World Bank, will be 16.5%, while the whole of Africa is less than 6%. Now, against that kind of inflation rate, I think it projects that Nigeria will grow this year by 1.9% and just 2.1% or something in 2022, as against over 3% and 4% in Africa. If we're spending this much money and ending up with this kind of level of inflation, and we're still having a lot of people ending up in poverty, increasing the number of those living below the poverty line, and not achieving this kind of anemic growth, there's need for a change of course. It appears the course to date, this government has had a philosophy that infrastructure is key, and it is. And that government must do whatever it needs to do, including significant borrowing, to fund infrastructure. I think after 6 years, if this is where we are at, where external debt is now about 33 billion compared to 10 billion when the government took over, I think the next 2 years should be one for a change of course. Yes, infrastructure is important, but you don't finance infrastructure at all costs. And what we are doing is not producing economic growth and is not achieving such massive transformation in our infrastructure. So I think there is need for a consideration of a change of course.
Yeah, I've always had a challenge in my head about the fact that most of our projections usually kind of terminal to one tenure or one term of one government. And I think that is a challenge. You're a businessman, and you know that if you have to plan business, you have to make projections. It's usually what you call the short-term, medium-term, long-term. I don't think 4 years is long-term, so to speak, considering the infrastructure deficits and gaps that we have had over the years. So let's look beyond one government. Let's look beyond what Nigeria should be doing progressively. You've talked about the limit of the markup, so to speak, that we have had so far, and how far away that is from the inflation figures indeed. So what did we get right, in your opinion, that gave us that markup? And what do we need to do to expedite action on that so that it can at least draw closer to reducing the inflation level?
Let me start from the last part of your question, because that's easier to answer. Inflation is bad for growth, and inflation is bad for stability. Once you are having very huge levels of deficit, very, very huge levels of deficit, particularly those that are not transparently financed from the financial markets, inflation is inevitable. The reason why we had 8 trillion of domestic debt in 2015 and 16 trillion now, and I think that 16 trillion excludes about 10 to 12 trillion that the central bank is yet to securitize. So you may actually be talking of an increase from 8 trillion to over 26 trillion. You can't have that level of government deficit and not have inflation and devaluation. It is just not possible. Now, what needs to be done. Like I said we've had 6 years where the government philosophy has been infrastructure is key, and we're going to find money to fund it. It hasn't quite worked. I think right now what we should be thinking about is that let's find a way where most of the funding of infrastructure can be done by the private sector, even if it is going to be delayed. And then the second thing, I think that government should be thinking of, let's work hard over the next 2 years to limit the extent to which we leave people worse off than we met them.
Sometimes it's tricky to understand how, government policies keep coming. I mean, you hear different announcements, different statements, and when you look at the figures, they don't seem to match. I mean, for inflation, you've mentioned it, the major boost or the major reason we have high inflation rate is because of food inflation, which accounts for about 70% of the recent increase we just saw over the past 1 year. But remember that you had the government saying, well, we shut our borders such that we can look inwards, ensure more food production, boost agriculture. You recall the borrower scheme as well, giving some sort of funding to farmers. That's on the one hand. Infrastructure is also a big deal because the World Bank mentioned electricity. I mean, Nigeria actually houses the highest population without access to electricity in the world, as it were. And you've heard the government speak about infrastructure. You've talked about it as well. So we have these government policies. But when you look at the figures, they don't match up. So where is that disconnect really? Because you've said the government should change course. So if it will change course, where does it need to look into?
Okay, first of all, as I often say, it's not only important to look at what policies are being executed. It's important to choose who will execute it. In the Nigerian economy, as indeed any economy, there are 3 economic pillars. There's the private sector, there is government, and there are households. Nigerian households are poor and weak. Government is inefficient. The private sector is still our best foot forward for executing major economic projects. And what could have been done differently is that rather than government undertaking huge borrowing to fund infrastructure, perhaps it's better to look at how to position the economy so that it will attract investment from the private sector to do the same things. The private sector will obviously do those things more efficiently and much, 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 much cheaper. That's the one thing. So now, talking about going forward, I actually think that if we are $35 billion of debt or $33 billion of debt instead of 10 where we took off, one legacy the Buhari government should try and leave is a foreign debt that is not higher than what it met. And I think over the next 2 years, if it is possible to work hard, to find funds, to take us back to 10, even if further infrastructure development tanks a bit, I think it's much better.
I want to quickly get it will be hard to get closure on that debate about whether government should handle things or the private sector, because the argument against that will always be, if the private sector comes in, then of course the private sector wants to make profit. What does that mean for the poor who can't already afford things that maybe government is even involved in? So what happens when the private sector comes in? Private sector wants to make profit, and clearly the prices might be high, or what people have to pay. So can we ever get closure to that argument? Because perhaps that's the thinking of the government, saying, let's be involved so we can at least mitigate the effect on the people.
Yes, we can. In 1999, because government wanted to do telephone lines, it kept doing the telephone lines, and the poor had no telephone lines. There were less than 750,000 telephone lines across the country. Today we have over 100 million telephone lines, employing a lot of those poor people who didn't have jobs. The communication sector has lifted a lot of people into the middle class, the people who they have employed and the businesses that have worked for them. I don't think we should say that, particularly in Africa, I don't think we should say the jury is out. The jury is spoken. The private sector is not perfect. And I'm a pro-poor person, and I'm not anti-government. I love this country. It's the only country I know. Up till today, I've had opportunity at least once, a major point in my life, to take a foreign passport, and I've declined it. And I still do not have a second passport. I'm not against government. I am pro people. I love for poor people to be lifted up. But I look back and I say what we've done so far has not worked. Let me also quickly, if you permit me, say this. There are a number of things that can be done with inflation and growth and transformation. What is painful is that, the most obvious and the easiest things to do usually disproportionately affect the poor. Now, the discipline of government is not to start there. For example, just shortly after this government took over, the then Secretary of the U.S. government, John Kerry, said that they have reviewed and they found that more than $9 billion of defense spending were traced to accounts of different Nigerian individuals. This government has been big on anti-corruption. Before we do something that will affect the poor, can we say that $25 billion, we want to find a committee of globally respected citizens, including 1 or 2 from Nigeria, to shop for that $25 billion, as a goal, and send a strong signal that we're going to find the $25 billion we've lost from abroad so that we don't leave more debt than we found. The second is that we need to reduce the quantum of waste in government budget. And institutionally, we also need to find institutions with professionals including cost managers, quantity surveyors, accountants, in a new kind of framework that starts to budget from zero base. Zero-based budgeting is, I assume that there is nothing I budgeted last year that I need this year. I'm going to start from base zero. And so we clean up our budget from the kind of zero base. Those are things that will, first of all, affect the rich and affect the bureaucracy. It is that then gives government the basis to say, let's now do the things that will affect the poor. So, for example, we then close the exchange rates. In an import-dependent economy, devaluation is inflationary. It spikes inflation. It affects everybody, much, much more so the poor. But you don't have the only thing that is worse than it is maintaining multiple exchange rates, which then can encourage speculative activity and can make people just make money through arbitrage. So when you have done that affects the rich, and it is seen that it has affected the rich, then let us affect the poor. So let's close exchange rates, and then let us negotiate with labor that this country can no longer afford any form of fuel subsidy. But we can start with the things that affect the rich.
Give me, I just wanted to break it down because I think you just proffered solution to the debt problem. Talked about the exchange rate and subsidy. But for that debt problem, if I got you correctly, it sounded like a very straightforward solution. How easy or how hard will that be getting, people to shop for that funds, if I got you correctly?
Okay, let me say this. There is nothing that can happen in transforming an African country, including Nigeria, that is easy. We're not in a good place. We're in a bad place. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be determined. Let me tell you what I mean. It's a pity people like someone like Emeka, someone like Kofi Annan is dead. If Nigeria sends a signal that says that our debt is 35 billion, over the next 2 years, we want to reduce it to 10. We need to find $25 billion of Nigeria's money abroad. And this is the committee. That committee will be backed by a framework of professionals. But the face of this effort is Emeka, who is President Obasanjo, and it is one of the foreign prime ministers of UK. You're sending a strong signal that you are not joking. Will it happen easily? No, it won't. Will it be possible? Yes, it will. Am I saying it's not? Why do I think it is possible? I said, on record, the former Secretary of State of US says, we have it on record that we found $9 billion. $9 billion is not little change. So it will not be easy. If we are looking for easy solutions, we might as well go to bed. We are not in a good place. We need hard, difficult propositions. But I think it's possible. I think it can be done. That's why I want to repeat again. I'm not against government. I love this country. And I also love poor people. One of the institutions where I served, I used to travel a lot between states. What used to break my mind was just to look, even traveling between state capitals. And then you look at the road, and these are major roads, and you look at the quality of houses where people are living. We need to lift poor people up. Whether it is with the best of intentions or not is besides the point. What we have done for 6 years has tripled foreign debt has more than tripled domestic debt, and it's only produced 1.9% economic growth, and it is producing more than 100 million people living below poverty line. It's not politics. It's just, let us look at it and say, okay, we meant well, but this hasn't worked. These last 2 years, maybe we should change course. And maybe if we change course, maybe even if we don't leave the average Nigerian much better off, we won't leave him worse off than we met him.
Interesting place. So, Anchor, we do thank you very much indeed for your perspectives. Mr. Kola, an economist and CEO of Asset Management. We're back in a moment.
Chamberlain Ayankarede, thank you very much for having me.
All right, then. We'll be back. Welcome back. Well, we'll take a look at some of the emails coming through from you. Williams, talking about tackling insecurity, says, I think it's rather unfortunate to keep hearing lines like, the president takes his time before commenting on issues. We live in a country where little kids are being kidnapped, and it's justifiable to take a long time before the CNC makes a comment. Why such long time? Why such a long time never taken to ban Twitter? Why was such a long time never taken to speak to the unknown gunmen in the southeast in the language they understand? It's high time we talked to the marauding bandits known by people in the communities in the language they understand.
Well, George, speaking about poverty in Nigeria, George Akpangbo says, please, can the government tell Nigerians the names and address of those 10 million Nigerians lifted out of poverty till date? All right, can the government tell us the names and address of those 10 million? These things are not difficult to verify. Let us try and be honest in Nigeria and speak the truth, no matter how bitter it might seem.
Names and address
of 10 million people?
Address?
Well, we have database in Nigeria, so that shouldn't be hard.
So people can Google it, right? Okay. David says, people say our democracy has failed, but it hasn't. Nigeria has never been a democracy. Our country has democratic organizational structures, but autocratic power structures. And the power structure is the effective structure. Nigeria is an autocratic republic. A course correction in our constitution is necessary. Isn't it the same constitution?
Well, this one comes from Iken Nambelu, who says, I'm impressed with the EFCC chairman's interview. Yes, it says an intelligent youth speaks with such respectful mannerisms. But my area of concern is the foreign companies peddling Ponzi schemes, sending Nigerian youths to hawk their products, sometimes pharmaceutical products, in the name of bringing one person and gaining bonus. They are marketing and selling their products in an unacceptable manner, recruiting an army of youths without proper remuneration. I'm a youth willing to serve in the interest of the country's development, and he's speaking for over 80 million youth. Well, this is from Iken Mbelu. Maybe he wants the EFCC to look in that area, Ponzi schemes and marketing. Let's look at this one from Edosa, talking about electronic voting. He says, considering the current level of insecurity nationwide, it's pertinent that we conduct electronic voting, not only to prevent the rocketing death rate, but also to ensure youth inclusion in the 2023 elections. The contemporary Nigerian youth space is electronic and mobile space. I am 30, I have never voted, and I know that 7 in every 10 Nigerian youths between the ages of 18 to 35 have never voted. I'm a Nigerian youth, hear my voice, is what he says. Well, I think it's one of the things that's been considered in the electoral amendment. How far-reaching electronic voting will go in the electoral amendment is what is not yet clear. Or we do know that elements of that should be introduced, they're expected to be introduced in the electoral amendment that is upcoming. Who knows? Let's not get our hopes too high, gentlemen.
Edosa needs to quickly look out for when the continual voter registration exercise continues, so you could go get your card. You need to vote.
Oh, yes. Well, don't forget that bill act has to be passed first. We're not sure when. It's meant to be June or July. Then the president has to assent to it.
So they told us July now.
For political awareness, I think that's what Malkwa is really talking about. How many youths are as political aware as they ought to be? I recall the governor of Rivers State also saying that people should get involved in their communities.
Yeah,
so,
good place to start.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That very local level. Know who your local government chairman is. Because, I mean, if you feel the impact at that level, say, for instance, security, wow, what a difference that will make.
Absolutely.
I guess.
Well, it's a fine place to leave it this morning. Thank you so much for watching. Maybe we could also, anyway, introduce Instagram to this since Twitter is now out of reach. So let's keep the conversation going. Send in your mails and, let's talk a lot more. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Malkwa Ogunyusi.
I'm Kayode Okikelu.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a good day.
I'm Chamberlain, so we'll see you next time.